trees who can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. One chakra. Namo Namaha.
Literally today. Happy New Year. Yeah. And it literally is a new chapter because we're beginning a new chapter here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana 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 Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana 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 Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Munatira Vanacharya Munatira Vanacharya Munatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvikacharya Satara Sada Shishimata Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Premsko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinda Ki Jai Jai Radha Krishna Gopa Gopanath Jai Makunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mayapur Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10. This is chapter 49, the first two verses. This is entitled Akrura's Mission in Hastinapur. In the Krishna book, Prabhupada called it, named this chapter, The Ill-Motivated Dhritarashtra. Okay. So we'll begin here. This is two verses. I'll just do the first one responsively. Shri Shuku Vacha Sagatva Hastinapuram Puravendra Yashon Kitam Dadarsha Tatram Bike Dadarsha Tatra Ambikyam Ayam Sabhishmam Viduram Pritam Sagatva Hastinapuram Puravendro Yasonkitam Yashokitam Darsha Tatram Bikeyam Sabhishmam Viduram Pritam Sagatva Hastinapuram Puravendra Yashonkitam Darsha Tatram Bikeyam Sabhishmam Viduram Pritam. Go. Sagadvam Hastiam Puram Poravendra Yashon Kitam Nadarsha Tatribikeyam Sabijmam Viduram Pritam Sagadva Hastina Puram Poravendra Yashon Kitam Tarsha Tatra Bikeyam Sabijmam Viduram Yam Sagatva Hasti Puram Poravendra Yashon Kitam Tarsha Tatra Bikeyam Sabijmam Viduram Pritam Sagadva Hasti Puram Poravendra Yashon Kitam Darsha Tatram Bikeyam Sabijmam Viduram Pritam Sagadva Hastinam Puram Poravendra Yashon Kitam Darsha Tatram Bikeyam Savidam Viduram. Okay. Sagadva Hastinam Puram Poravendra Yashon Kitam Darsha Tatra Bikeyam Sabijam Viham. Okay. Sahaputram Sabalikam Bhadradwajyam Gotamam Karnam Suyodanam Dronim Pandavan Suridoparan. Word for word. Sri Shuka Uvacha. Shukadev Goswami said, Saha, he, Akrura, Gatva, going, Hastinapuram, to Hastinapur, Purva Indra, the rulers of the dynasty of Puru, Yashaha, by the glory, Ankitam, decorated. Dadarsha, he saw. Tatra, there. Ambikeyam, the son of Ambika. Dhritarashtra, sa, together with. Bhishmam, Bhishma. Viduram, Vidura. Pritam, Prita. Kunti, the widow of King Pandu. Sahaputram, with his son, namely Somadatta. Cha, and Balikam, Maharaj Balika. Bharadwajam, Drona. Sa, and Gotamam, Kripa. Karnam, Karna, Suyodanam, Duryodhan, Dronim, the son of Drona, Ashvatthama, Pandavam, the sons of Pandu, Surida, friends, Aparan, other. Sounds like the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra, doesn't it? Shukadev Goswami said, Akrura went to Hastinapur, the city distinguished by the glory of the Paurava rulers. There he saw Dhritarashtra, Bhishma, Vidura, and Kunti, along with Balika and his son Somadatta. He also saw Dronacharya, Kripacharya, Karna, Duryodhana, Ashvatthama, the Pandavas, and other close friends. Please repeat. Shukadeva Goswami said, Akrura went to Hastinapur, the city distinguished by the glory of the Paurava rulers. There he saw Dhritarashtra, Bhishma Vidura, and Kunti, along with Balika and his son Somadatta. He also saw Dronacharya, Kripacharya Karna, Duryodhana, Ashvatthama, the Pandavas, and other close friends. There's no purport by Srila Prabhupada's disciples, but there are tikas by the Acharyas. So I'll read these tikas by the Acharyas. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, this chapter describes Akrura going to Hastinapur, and after understanding Dhritarashtra's ill treatment of the Pandavas, his return to Mathura. Going to Hastinapur marked with the fame of the Puru dynasty, with temples and Brahmanas' houses constructed by them. Akrura saw Dhritarashtra, Balika, with his son Somadatta, Drona, and Kripa, and the rest. Jiva Goswami writes, first it was proper that Akrura see the king. Then he met Bhishma, since he was the best of the Kurus. But when he came, they were sitting together, so he saw both of them at the same time. He then met Vidura, since he was their intimate associate. He then met Kunti, since she was Akrura's sister. He then met Balika, who was the elder of the Kurus. As he was searching for the Pandavas, he saw their teacher, Dronacharya, and then his assistant, Kripacharya. He then saw Karna and the other children who were studying with them. He met the Pandavas last to show his neutrality and to give them instructions on Dharma. Instead of Sa Gautamam, sometimes Cha Gautamam is seen. The Cha means api, or even, to indicate that Dronacharya, though a Brahmana, was included in the Kshatriyas. Others refers to Shakuni and others. Sanat Goswami writes, the two verses are connected. Akrura, whose good qualities have been mentioned, going to Hastinapur, saw there in the assembly Dhritarashtra and others. They are all mentioned together because he saw them at the same time. Bhishma is mentioned with him because he was near to Dhritarashtra, who was sitting on the throne, in order to get his approval on all matters. Bhishma was on his right and Vidura on his left as a minister. Others were seated around, or Bhishma was with Vidura. The two were seated together because of affection for each other, having similar proper conduct. Because Kunti was seated near them, she is mentioned after the two. The word cha means others. Balika was with his son. The second cha means api. Although Drona was a Brahmana, he sat among them, the Kshatriyas. The other version with cha indicates that Drona sat with Kripacharya. The list is from the king's greater to lesser respect. Thus, Balika was respected by the king more than Drona, because he increased the clan. His son is mentioned with him because he was by his side, or Balika was respected as a grandfather. Karna is mentioned with Duryodhana because they were friends. The others are clear. The Pandavas are mentioned last, being situated far away and not being respected. Others indicates Shakuni, Dushasana, and others. Om Agyana Timurandasya Gyanan Ganan Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitangena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Nama Om Vishnu Badaya Krishna Bastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminitanamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharni Nirvasesa Shunyavadi Brashachadeshtarni Panchakalpa Charubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. The family is all here. And the family is not all right because there is a lot of strife in this family. And they're referred to in the verse as the poor of a dynasty, the poor of a rulers. Because if we go back far enough here, we'll see that there are three families who are connected to King Puru, who is an ancient king who is actually the founder of, well, in a sense, he's the founder, but his father, actually Yayati, and we'll speak about that in one moment. He's the founder in a way because Puru took Yayati's old age and was benedicted then afterwards. But the point being here is that many generations before, there was a King Yayati. And King Yayati had many sons. And I won't get into it because it's a short time. But he was, he wanted to enjoy, so he wanted to give his old age to someone in his family. And all his sons refused and were thus cursed because they refused to honor their father's wishes. Only Puru, he actually agreed to take the old age of his father, and ultimately he was benedicted then because he became started the Puru dynasty, from which the Bharat dynasty and the Kuru dynasty also sprung in later generations. There was one other brother, however, Yadu, and Yadu did refuse to take his father's old age, but he gave a philosophical reason why. And that philosophical reason why is because he had to start the Yadu dynasty, which is the dynasty in which Krishna would appear. So he actually he did that. So here we have Yadu dynasty, Kuru dynasty, and the Pandavas. The Kurus divided up into the dynasty divided up into the Kurus and to the Pandavas. And that can be explained because, again, we'll keep this short, that Santanu, who is the father of both Vichitravirya and Chitrangada, his two sons, and also Bhishma. Of course, Bhishma was the son of Ganga, and Vichitravirya and Chitrangada were the sons of Satyavati. Yes. And so Chitrangada was killed by a Gandharva of the same name, and Vichitravirya couldn't father children because he was so sick. So Bhishma was asked, and he refused. So eventually, what's her name? Anyway, the wife of Santanu, she was the fisherman's daughter. Satyavati, right? Yeah, Satyavati. She called for her son, she called for Vyasadeva to come and father children. So he fathered Dhritarashtra, who was blind, because the wife of Vichitravirya, Ambika, shut her eyes when she saw him because he was so just disgusted. And then Pandu was born of Ambalika, who's the younger sister of Ambika, and he was born like an albino white because she was fear. And then later on, Satyavati wanted to have another child born, and she asked Ambika again, and she said, no way. And then Vidura was born of a maidservant, so therefore he's not able to be king. So we have the three brothers. A blind brother, Pandu, then dies of a curse, and Vidura. So Dhritarashtra is king by some kind of fluke, and he's not a good king because he's blind. And he's blind in more than one way. He's blind both physically and spiritually. And so we have a situation in Hastinapur where there's a lot of tension between the 100 Kauravas, the sons of Dhritarashtra, and the 5 Pandavas, the sons of Pandu. And this dynamic will fuel a horrible situation in which ultimately there's a war in which everyone is killed except for the Pandavas, because the Pandavas were righteous and the Kauravas ultimately were sinful. And they were sinful in so many ways. They show it over and over again. They show it because they try to kill the Pandavas in so many ways, and they show it because they try to strip Draupadi naked in the assembly, and they show it because Duryodhana refuses to even give the Pandavas any land whatsoever so they could rule a kingdom. So it was impossible for this not to happen because of the attitude of Dhritarashtra and his sons, which means that we have to understand that even good instruction, and there is going to be good instruction in this chapter by Akrura to Dhritarashtra, even good instruction will not penetrate the mind of a person who is bewildered by the three modes of material nature and has a materialistic demeanor or a demeanor that is, one wants to enjoy this material world, therefore one can't hear about what the real truth is. So if we turn to some places in the literature, like the Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam, we have there are some notations about Dhritarashtra's really ill motivation. And so the first citing we'll do is in the first verse of the Bhagavad Gita, which is a famous verse. Dharma kshetra kurukshetra samaveta yutsava mamakam pandavaschaiva kim akrutvata sanjaya. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra desiring to fight, what did they do? And Prabhupada writes in the purport, at the very end of the purport, says that both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belong to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field, the unnecessary plants are taken out, so it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kurukshetra, the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, and the unwanted plants like Dhritarashtra's son, Duryodhana, and others would be wiped out, and the thoroughly religious persons headed by Yudhisthira would be established by the Lord. So, we see here that Krishna is going to ultimately separate, as it says in the Bible, the wheat from the chaff. When one is threshing grain, you beat the grain, whether it's rice or wheat, and then the chaff or the straw comes off, and you keep the grains. Well, it turns out that Dhritarashtra's family and himself, they're the chaff, they're the straw. Why? Because they're impious. And they're impious because they're motivated for material gain. And they can't see that material gain is inferior to following Dharma and ultimately becoming a lover of the Supreme Lord. There's a lot of levels of Krishna consciousness. And we've been in dealing mostly in the first part of the 10th canto with the highest levels of Krishna consciousness. Now we're entering into the second part of the 10th canto, and still the highest levels are there, but we'll be more concerned in many sections with some of the more functional lower levels, that is at least following the Dharma by which one can become Krishna conscious. So Yudhisthira is sometimes called Dharmaraj because he's the king of Dharma. whereas the sons of Dhritarashtra are far from Dharma Raj. They are against Dharma. It's stated also in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the beginning of the third canto in Vidura's instructions to Maitreya. I will tell you, just a moment. In the beginning of the third canto, when Vidura is instructing Maitreya, in chapter 1, verse 6, this is actually Shukadeva Goswami narrating the narration, but this is the chapter where Vidura is speaking to Maitreya. And Shukadeva Goswami says, King Dhritarashtra became blind under the influence of impious desires to nourish his dishonest sons, and thus he set fire to the lacquer house to burn his fatherless nephews, the Pandavas. Of course, the lacquer house is just one of the many attempts of the Kurus to eliminate the Pandavas. And then Prabhupada writes, Dhritarashtra was blind from birth, but his blindness in committing impious activities to support his dishonest sons was a greater blindness than his physical lack of eyesight. The physical lack of sight does not bar one from spiritual progress, but when one is blind spiritually, even though physically fit, that blindness is dangerously detrimental to the progressive path of spiritual life. And Bilvamangala Thakur was blind. He actually was intentionally blind because his eye, again, we go to a Bible verse, if the eye offend thee, pluck it out. Well, his eyes were offensive because he was looking lustfully at a young woman, and so he plucked his eyes out. But he was seeing Krishna everywhere, even though he was blind. And Surdas, he was a blind poet, and he wrote great poetry about Krishna. So physical blindness, that's not a problem for Krishna consciousness, because actually, in Krishna consciousness, we see with our ears. It's Shabda Brahman. You know, we can go to the holy place, like a tourist, and see places that are just sights to see. And we won't really be there at the holy place. It's when we travel around, we circumambulate Govardhan with a sadhu who is a Rasik Vaishnava, who knows the pastimes, who knows the place, who is relishing the stories of Krishna. And we go to these wonderful places, and we see with our eyes a place, and it may not be that spectacular of a place because of time and the circumstance of Kali Yuga. But when we hear the stories about what happened at this place, then that place becomes alive, and we see Krishna there, and we see the pastimes there, and we relish the pastimes. So the ear, that is the most important way to see Krishna consciousness, to see Krishna, to see the spiritual world. But in the case of Dhritarashtra, his ears were blind. He couldn't hear anything because he was sinful. And his nature was that he was going to protect his sons no matter what they said, even though he knew in many cases that they were really sinful. And he was weak, too. So Duryodhana was able to, bully him into anything he wanted. So this is not a good situation. It's a situation in which Dhritarashtra, his whole life is ruined. It's not till the very end of his life that Vidura is able to give him some instructions that he can follow so that he can disentangle himself from the mire of material desires that he's in. But at this point, Kura is here in Hastinapur, and he's seeing the whole group here. Bhishma and Vidura and Dhritarashtra and Kunti. And the Pandavas are mentioned last for two reasons, it says. One, because he wanted to see them last and then give them some instructions. And secondly, because the Pandavas were really on the edge because they were being ostracized by the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra, Duryodhana, and Dhritarashtra himself. Now, this problem of not being able to hear and not being able to take instructions is something we all have to take up ourselves. The Bhagavatam gives us pastimes, and the pastimes are wonderful stories, and they oftentimes are on a level of very high rasa. But they also, everything in the Bhagavatam has a lesson for us who may not be on the highest platforms, but we're devotees, and therefore we need to learn a lesson. And the lesson we need to learn here is how we can hear Krishna Katha, how we can hear instructions about the Supreme Lord, and then become benefited by that, and not let our Dhritarashtra-like bad side become prominent so that we can't hear instructions. If we go to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and it's his Anchalila, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Anchalila 6:199, and this is taken from the story where Raghunath Das Goswami finally escapes from his family. Raghunath Das Goswami was attracted to Lord Chaitanya from an early age, and his parents, his father, was a very wealthy merchant, and his uncle also was a very wealthy merchant, and they were determined to make sure that Raghunath Das Goswami become a wealthy, well-placed merchant, and they were pious Vaishnavas. They were not demons, but Raghunath Das Goswami was not interested in being with them, and several times he tried to escape, and at one point Lord Chaitanya said, "You just go back and be a normal person and your time will come." Well, when his time does come, he actually, there's a ruse for him to leave the house of his uncle and father, that his guru says, you know, the pujari is not able, he's left his service, so please go do the puja at the temple. And when they left in the middle of the night, the temple was here, and Raghunath Das Goswami went that way. And he escaped. And he got to eventually meet Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya then speaks to him about his situation, and he talks about his uncle and his father. And he says to him that, first he says, this is verse 196, since your father and his elder brother are younger brothers of Nilambar Chakravarti, who's his grandfather, Lord Chaitanya's grandfather, I may joke about them in this way. So he's going to say something that's really nasty, but he's joking, really, okay? But he's making a point. He says, my dear Raghunath Das, your father and his elder brother are just like worms in stool in the ditch of material enjoyment. For the great disease of the poison of material enjoyment is what they consider happiness. If we consider this material world happiness, we can't become Krishna conscious. It doesn't mean we can't be happy in the material world. We're happy in the material world by being Krishna conscious. It doesn't mean we have to be uncomfortable in the material world. Krishna provides us some comfort so that our minds are peaceful, stable. But if we just consider being happy in this world, the contact of the senses with the sense objects, that's like the worm in the stool, because he also thinks that contact with the senses with the sense objects is happiness. So then Lord Chaitanya continues, although your father and uncle are charitable to Brahmanas and greatly help them, they are nevertheless not pure Vaishnavas. However, they are almost like Vaishnavas, and the word here is Vaishnava Praya. So we may actually at this point be Vaishnava Praya, like Vaishnavas. But we want to become really Vaishnavas. We say Vaishnavas for everyone. Anyone who chants Hare Krishna one time is considered to be a person who is to be respected. But we want to become pure Vaishnavas. That means we want to become fixed in our loving service to the Supreme Lord in a particular mood of loving service, then we have to make some advancement. We have to advance from the Vaishnava Praya. After all, I mean, both the father and uncle were giving nice donations, so they were pious. They were good. They were certainly the kind of people who would put on big programs for advanced devotees. But they weren't going to become pure devotees doing what they did. And then Lord Chaitanya speaks again to, further speaks in verse 199 to Raghunath Das. And he speaks it very clearly here. Those who are attached to materialistic life and are blind to spiritual life must act in such a way that they are bound to repeated birth and death by the actions and reactions of their activities. So one may argue, I mean, so many places we've seen in so many stories, like, hey, Ravana, don't you get it? Just give Sita back, and everything will be okay. Kamsa, don't you get it? Just, give up this Dhritarashtra. Wake up. Don't you get it? Duryodhana, don't you get it? No, they don't, because they're so attached to material activities. So we simply have to understand that we also can become very attached to material activities. So we have to try to make advancement in Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada, he states in the purport, as clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 9, Yagnartat karmano nyatra loko yam karma bandhana. If one does not act as a pure devotee, whatever acts he performs will produce reactions of fruit of bondage, karma bandhana. So there's the instruction. And then another place, this very famous verse, Nunam parmata kurute vikarma yad indriya prityaya aprinoti nasaru manye yata atmanoyam asan api kleshada asadeha. A materialistic person madly engaged in activities for sense enjoyment does not know that he is entangling himself in repeated birth and death, and that his body, although temporary, is full of miseries. A vishayi, a person blindly caught in a web of materialistic life, remains in the cycle of birth and death perpetually. This is our existential position as living entities in this material world. Those of us in this room are very fortunate because we were curious, or we were disturbed or distressed, or we were actually saintly, and we were able to meet because on our journey of trying to understand, why am I here? Why am I suffering? So a lot of people say, why am I here? Why am I suffering? I don't care. I'll have a drink, Why am I here? Why am I suffering? Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll just become big and powerful, and I won't ask that question anymore. But we asked that question, and in asking that question, we were fortunate to then meet a pure devotee of the Lord. We could have met a Mayavadi, and I did meet a lot of Mayavadis, but by the mercy of Krishna, I had enough pious credits not to become too attracted to them. So when we met Prabhupada, or we met Prabhupada's representative, we then were able to understand that there was something besides this material world where, sense gratification is the highest thing. Even the demons sometimes are, quote, religious, but they're religious so they can enjoy in this material world. Ravana, he's a devotee of Shiva. So the point being is that we have been blessed to have been given the seed of devotion by a pure devotee of the Lord. And that seed of the devotion, what is it? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. In this age of Kali, there's only one thing we can do to become self-realized. Ultimately, it's just the holy names. We're not able to do all these different sacrifices. We're not able to follow all sorts of rigorous yogic principles. And even if we did, we wouldn't get the same result as chanting Hare Krishna. So merciful is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Nityananda Prabhu. That by following their process of self-realization, simply joyful, chanting and dancing, But we have to do things, but it must be done in a way in which we're absorbed. That's why inattentive chanting leads to all sorts of problems of the 10 offenses. When we're chanting, we should be chanting. If we're in Maya, we have to chant more. Sorry about that. It's over. But anyway, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Adipurusham Kamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Kamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Kamaham Bhajami Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Akom Vidamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakale Priya Priti Manti Vasyan Divan Dikayanti Jiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Amaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham
Bajahure mana Shri Nandanandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare Shri Nandanandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare Bajahure mana Shri Nandanandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare Bajahure mana Shri Nandanandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare Tulabhamanava Janama Satsange Taro Hoe Bhava Sindhure Tulabhamanava Janama Satsange Sita Atapa Patabarishana Idina Jamini Jagire Sita Atapa Patabarishana Idina Jamini Jagire Vipale se vinu kripana durajana Chapala sukalaba lagire Vipale se vinu kripana durajana Chapala sukalaba lagire Bajahure mana Shri Nandanandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare Bajahure mana Shri Nandanandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare Idana Yobana Putra Parijana Ideki Ache Parati Tire Idana Yobana Putra Parijana Ideki Ache Parati Tire Kamala Dala Jala Jivana Talamala Bajahu Hari Pada Nitire Kamala Dala Jala Jivana Talamala Bajahu Hari Pada Nitire Bajahure mana Shri Nandanandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare Bajahure mana Shri Nandanandana Abhaya Shravana Kirtana Smarana Vandana Pada Sevana Dasyare Shravana Kirtana Smarana Vandana Pada Sevana Pujana Sakhi Jana Atmani Vedana Govinda Dasa Bilashare Chahure mana Shri Nandanandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare Bajahure mana Shri Nandanandana Abhaya Charanara Vindare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh Jaya Radha Goloka Nanda, Radha Goloka Nanda Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Goloka Nanda, Radha Goloka Nanda Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Goloka Nanda, Radha Goloka Nanda Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Goloka Nanda, Radha Goloka Nanda Shri Radhe. Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Shri Vrindavan Dham, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Shri Vrindavan Dham. Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Shri Vrindavan Dham, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Shri Vrindavan Dham. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya 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 Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Ki Jai. Thank you. Perfection of happiness. I have uselessly served wicked and miserly men. What assurance of real happiness is there in all of one's wealth, youthfulness, sons, and family members? Life is tottering like a drop of water on a lotus petal. Therefore, you should always serve and worship the divine feet. Foot of his lotus feet, become his servant, worship him, offer him prayers, serve his lotus feet, become his servant, worship him, serve him as a friend, and completely offer him his very self.
Akar Bahuda Nija Sarva Shakti Tat Prapitani Amita Smarane Nakala Etad Drishita Vakripa Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaiva Midrishamiha Janinanuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Sahishuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vajagadisha Kamaye Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare Bhavatad Bhaktir Ahoitaki Twai Ainanda Tanujam Kikaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripayata Babada Pankaja Stita Duli Sadrashim Vachintaya Nayanam Gadashru Daraya Vadanam Gad Gadurudaya Gira Pulakarnishitam Vapukada Tavanama Grahane Bhavishyati Yuga Yatam Namishena Chakshusha Pravashayatam Shunayatam Jagat Sarvam Govindam Virahename Aslishya Vapadamritam Panastumam Adarshanam Marmahata Karotuva Yatatatava Vidadatu Lampato Matprananatastu Saivanapara. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. Oh, my Lord, continual chanting of your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh, my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he's always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Sri Shastika Ki Jai. And so today is New Year's Day, and what a better way to start New Year's with Kirtan beginning at 10:30 today to 4:30. And there'll be some vendors downstairs, and there'll be prasadam there. And so let's get together and have Kirtan today and ring in the new year on a transcendental note. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.